Great. So I am a doctoral student here in Bangalore, and my work is on technology innovation and new product development. And my presentation today is focusing on the technology innovation and ICT in the field in India, especially from a development point of view. And today in the presentation, I'm going to talk about my paper which I submitted to the IPID meeting, which was focusing on how the technology innovations are playing a role in increasing access to information and communication, especially in the context of organized communities in India which are not able to afford or sustain their access. So we are looking at marginalized communities and bottom of the pyramid communities in India, where it's very difficult to have access to any kind of communication devices and information, hence is a problem for them. So the research objective here in the paper is to build the theoretical framework from the literature which is already existing in the field. If there are any major works done in other emerging economies, then trying to understand that part of the scholarship and then building a theoretical framework for the Indian context. And then trying to understand the activities that are happening on the field. So basically designing the study to collect the data and to gather empirical support for our theoretical arguments. So I'll start by presenting very briefly about how this is important in ICT, and especially to understand the problems that people face in marginalized communities, and how ICT and technology innovations can play a role here in development. So there are several issues when it comes to access in marginalized communities. It can be from a financial aspect, and they are simply not able to afford information and communication technologies, or whether we are talking about reaching out to them, they are just not able to afford them. The second part, and this is an important issue for large communities which are basically at a loss in terms of their physical locations, and there are several physical hindrances to reach out to them. So those communities also get cut off automatically from the, let's say, if you compare them with urban slums, then they are at a disadvantage, because if they are in rural areas, then the government and the people are not able to reach out to them. Then the access is also hindered because of the sustainability. Even if you have the access, how long will you be able to sustain that access, and do they see any benefit out of it? That is also a major hindrance in terms of adopting the technology and seeing the utility out of that information, and how can they get benefited in the long run. They are not able to necessarily see it in the context of bottom of the pyramid, where we have people living below, let's say, $1 a day, and they are not able to see the advantage in the long term or in the short run with the ICT or with any kind of information or communication that might be helpful for their employment, their learning, but they are not able to see it. So then there are several other social issues which come into the picture in terms of how they look at the utility of information and communication. So this is just a broad description of what we are dealing with, a little bit about the context. And we move on to the next part, where we try to connect technology innovations and ICT, because what we are seeing right now is a lot of technology innovations are aimed at, let's say, a larger market, or perceived to be a larger market, which is the customers which can buy the products and can sustain the services from the companies. And hence we see, if we see literature 30 years ago, or practitioner-based literature 30 years ago, we don't see too many people talking about technology innovations targeted just for BOP. And in recent years, we see a lot of growth in that field where organizations, whether they are social organizations or they are business or profit-making organizations, they are interested in expanding and including those customers because now they see that it is a potentially big market and it's a big part of emerging economies. Maybe if you look at economies in India or the market structures in Brazil or other parts of the world, you would be able to see that there are a lot of customers who are waiting to be served. So ICT in marginalized communities can basically help them in not just getting connected and getting access to information, but they can also help in dealing with making ICT affordable. And entrepreneurship and technology innovations in this field is definitely trying to reduce the digital divide in ICT and to provide more access to the people who are initially not considered a part of the market. Now, when we talk about the absence of technology innovations, we see that there are a lot of developments in terms of the technology, but not everybody from that community is able to afford it. Especially if you're looking at the BOP communities in India, it forms a large part of the population, and they are not able to afford it, as well as not willing to invest their money and resources into it. So then there's a larger socioeconomic problem in terms of how to provide information when people are not ready to pay for it, and when people are not necessarily able to afford it. So we deal with we talk about why is ICT important in terms of benefits to the community. So we already see that there are technologies being built around how learning can be enhanced for such communities, how especially self-learning models can be implemented where people in rural areas or urban slum areas are able to learn on their own using these technologies. So I have quoted an example here from Delhi where people, in one of the biggest slums in Delhi, there were a few researchers who actually went in and they did a famous experiment where they invested in a very cheap computer, and they basically put it in a wall there in the slum area in Delhi. And what they realized was that children and community members started using and trying to learn the technology, trying to learn the computer and how to run the computer on their own. And they started teaching each other, and they were able to use the internet to find information on their own, and they were able to learn things like how to basically get information on the web and how to use internet, and then they were able to access a lot of other things which initially researchers were not expecting them to do. So a lot of these learning technologies, then basically these hole-in-the-wall experiments, they gave rise to a lot of research on self-learning mechanisms and learning technologies which could be used at the bottom of the pyramid. So that's one of the things that we are seeing, that in ICT, people are able to not just use the technologies for learning, but they are also able to develop their own mechanisms to get the information on their own, and all they need is very cheap hardware and software resources for that. So we see that these experiments might have something to it, because we see a lot of social enterprises now entering this field where they are trying to develop self-learning and community-driven initiatives. The second aspect can be the information access itself, where market information and vendor information is basically helpful to fishermen, farmers, and to people who work in agriculture and other sectors, and they make their daily wage out of it. So how do they get these informations on time? Because in some of these cases where the fishermen are going to the ocean, especially to the oceans which are far away from the coast, they're not able to get information about the weather or about the turbulence on time, and it can actually cost them their life, and as well as they can lose their boat, and it could be dangerous. In terms of farmers, it is the same thing, that they could lose their crops or they could lose their wage because they are not able to get the market information on time. So there are a lot of enterprises which have entered this field where they are trying to build cheap technologies and cheaper cell phones to get this information dynamically and on time to these people, so that they can improvise and they can be more profitable in their daily activities, and they can learn from these information that is being provided to them to enhance their profitability, not just for short term, but also for long term. For energy access, we see that a lot of solar energy powered products and renewable resources of energy are entering the market in BOP, and this basically is of great interest to people not just in India but also for policymakers everywhere else, because it's very difficult to reach out to every single household in a large country like India, where the infrastructure is not that great and not that developed. And energy access basically means that you are unable to do other things. If you don't have any energy access or no electricity, then you are hindered not just in your daily activities, but also for development of your family overall. So these are the three contexts which I started digging into to understand the impact of innovations and the impact of ICT in BOP. And we move on to the next part where I will briefly talk about how we are designing the study and what is the method that we are using in the study. So what we are doing is we started with the grounded theory approach because we wanted to explore arguments from it, and we used the case study, the single case study approach given by Eisenhardt in 1989 for theoretical argument building, and this was done by reviewing the literature as well as reviewing the secondary data in these three sectors which I already mentioned about, and build the cases and then further go down and build more cases from it. So right now what we have done is we have the secondary data. We have secondary data on telecommunication and energy, and we are further digging up the data on education sector, trying to figure out what are the enterprises which are working on it. So here's a brief about what we have done so far. So we have in telecommunication, we are looking at ITC and Nokia and how they are trying to help out people in agriculture, people in fishing industry, and people in the markets who are belonging to the BOP space, but who are trying to connect to the markets efficiently by using technology and information access. And the second context that I talked about was the energy context. So we have several enterprises in India which now operate in that context, like Celco and several other renewable energy-based enterprises and social enterprises work on it. So we are trying to understand how they make energy affordable and sustainable to these people, not just in the remote areas like rural villages and distant areas, but also in urban slums. And we are also trying to see how they are catering to the market. So they are able to, at a very low cost, they are able to customize their products, and they are able to cater to the households more effectively. So it's this is something which is of great interest to the people who are basically, let's say, not an average household, but they are much more smaller in size and they need something very low budget. So how these enterprises are able to address their needs. And then the third context is about the learning programs which are being run by some of these enterprises, where they are using technology and ICT to make education a visible option and an affordable option for the members of the communities. So, and education obviously is important because we see that skill development and employee-based trainings can be important for getting them future opportunities in workforce. And so So I move on to the last few slides of my presentation, where what we are right now doing is we are in the process of connecting to the enterprises to get data from them. So that's going to be the primary data. And we are trying to also connect to the enterprise, not just the enterprise, but also the community, because we need to talk to the people in the community and see what is the impact that they see and understand their economic and social problems in adopting and in understanding the technology innovations and ICT. So we have started making requests for the fieldwork from these enterprises, and currently we are seeking information qualitatively, quantitatively, and as well as any kind of published documents that they have that they share with us for our research. And from all these data collection activities, we basically aim to contribute to the IT literature, especially from an angle of emerging economy and BOP. And we also want to understand technology innovations and their linkages with ICT and how it can help in development. So that is what I'm trying to do with this paper, and I think I'm done with the presentation. Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.